about. And welcome to this little webinar talking about kind of integrative oncology and how you can thrive after breast cancer diagnosis. I know some of you are new to me, so I'm going to share a little bit about me, and then I'm going to get straight into it. There's going to be lots of information shared, but on lots of different topics. It's just to give you a flavor of the kind of things I do. So I'm a nutritional scientist, functional integrative medicine practitioner, and nutrigenomics practitioner. What does that mean? It means that I am trained and use a nutrition and diet and lifestyle to support people to reduce their risk of cancer and other diseases and to have optimized their health. It is all evidence-based science. I've been doing this for 20 years. I actually went to medical school to become an oncology professional oncologist. And at 25 years ago, my mother had breast cancer. That gives away my age. But she had breast cancer, and I kind of realized through that process what an oncologist's job is. And I didn't want to do that. It wasn't the right thing for me. I wasn't sure medicine was the right thing for me, because what I realized at that time was nutrition and lifestyle. It wasn't something we were talking about when it came to people's cancer or breast cancer experiences and helping them to recover. There was already data coming out from the World Cancer Research Fund and lots of other organizations about how we can use a diet and lifestyle and how that can be used to both prevent and reduce the risk of cancer, but also to help people recover. So that's essentially what I'm about. My master's thesis, which I did my master's in nutritional medicine 20 years ago. My master's thesis was researching diets that reduce the risk of recurrence in cancer, breast cancer. And I'm currently putting together a PhD proposal. I do lots of academic research, and I work with cancer patients and breast cancer patients. But I've also had breast cancer myself when I was 29 at the taught, once the taught part of the nutritional medicine master's was finishing. I found a lump and was diagnosed with very early breast cancer, mostly DCIS, a tiny bit of stage 1, and had a mastectomy and hormone treatment. I've had 2 local recurrences because I didn't actually ever have radiotherapy, and I had a skin sparing mastectomy, so it's come back in the skin. So that I've had more surgery and hormone treatment, and then also radiotherapy. So hopefully that's the end of that, because that skin is now in the dustbin. I'm also incredibly passionate about health inequalities in cancer, and I help to educate and do research. Currently, we know that Black and Asian and minority ethnic people have poor outcomes, so I'm very passionate about that too. Anyway, so what can we do to reduce the risk of breast cancer recurrence and spread? That's what we're all concerned about. When we've had a breast cancer diagnosis, I think most people are concerned about that. Obviously, there's loads of other emotional, psychological, mental issues, but there is this whole thought process about what can we do and the fear of recurrence. So I wanted to kind of set the story straight. What is integrative oncology? I think a lot of people have a misconception that integrative oncology is all alternative treatments and all just using nutrition. It's absolutely not. And I do want to say it's about being patient-centered. We use evidence-informed. It's a field of cancer where we use the primary medical treatments, which are surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immunotherapy, hormone treatment, targeted treatment, all of those things. We're also using complementary supportive therapy. So that could be things like acupuncture, it could be yoga, it could be mind-body therapies. And then there's a whole lifestyle and behavioral approach where we look at our nutrition, we look at our lifestyle, maybe using supplements, all sorts of things. But we know that with this integrative approach, we know that overall survival is better, but also people's quality of life is better. And for me, my quality of life is really important. I don't want to be alive and just feeling really ill all the time. I want to be alive and thriving. And there's one thing knowing and understanding the cancer journey from an intellectual perspective, but there's something about having walked that road. And I've walked that road alongside those of you who've had breast cancer diagnosis. So we're really looking to optimize health, quality of life, and your clinical outcomes, both before, during, and beyond cancer treatment. So again, this whole lifestyle, is it the key to health and well-being? And if you look at this particular thing, which I really love, it really looks at all the different elements of lifestyle which can impact our health and well-being. And I'm going to actually touch on all of these. So the whole healthy eating, obviously this is whole plant-based food, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, about physical activity, managing stress. Stress is one of those things that we don't realize it really physiologically affects our body and how our body behaves. And I'll share a little bit more about that. Relationships and our social health, our sleep, and then avoiding risky substance, which is kind of really our environment and toxins. So these are all things that I'm going to touch upon today. There are quite a lot of slides, so I'm going to try and keep it very much on time. So when we think about nutrition, that we know there's a link to nutrition, physical activity, and different elements of cancer. And you don't need to understand this, but what we're trying to look at is that there's different parts of the cancer cells and how they behave, so they can actually avoid our immune system, which is like this amazing CCTV camera system, just trying to catch them and to metastasize. And what we're trying to do is reduce that risk, whether that's with treatment, medical treatment, whether that's with diet and lifestyle. And that's what we want to do. We know that there's lots of evidence to show that, and this is not to put blame on any of us, that 30 to 40% of cancers can be preventable. Obviously, smoking is one of the big things. But again, like we know that there's lots of DNA changes. We know that things like alcohol and burnt food can make it impact, and obesity, and having metabolic disorders. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we know that poor nutrition affects how our cells behave and how resilient they are. So this is not to put blame. This is just what we're trying to understand and what we can do to make the difference. So, jumping into the nutrition, there's so much I could talk about nutrition, but what I do want to say is I want to give you some top tips to take away with you. Now, there has been lots and lots of research. The World Cancer Research Fund has done so much research, and they've looked at over 12 million women around the world and followed them. And from these epidemiological studies, they've found the following recommendations. They're slightly different for premenopausal women and postmenopausal women, but a lot of the principles are the same. So what we know, and there's evidence to show this, and I'm not really going into the lifestyle risk factors because we've already had breast cancer. That I have actually recorded another webinar on that. So we're moving past. This is actually if you've already had breast cancer. What we know is that eating a high intake of non-starchy vegetables can decrease the risk of estrogen negative breast cancer. But also we're starting to understand it could actually impact positive breast cancer, estrogen positive breast cancer too. And that's, we think, to do with the fiber. And I will touch a little bit on gut health. I'm not doing that today, but I wanted to share this. So when we think about the starchy vegetables, we're thinking about all the things like the beans and the peppers and the lettuces and the tomatoes and things like that. It's the starchy vegetables, things like the root vegetables like the pumpkins and the potatoes, and well, pumpkins actually don't count, but the potatoes and the parsnips and carrot, things like that. Then there's the foods containing carotenoids. These are these amazing, what gives our fruit and vegetables color. So pumpkin, peaches, mangoes, nectarines, all sorts of fruits and vegetables have carotenoids, and we want to eat loads and loads of fruits and vegetables. And none of this is rocket science, as you know. Now, there's so much contention, but the data actually shows that having dairy products, and I'll explain a little bit more about that, particularly eating those fermented dairy products. So those are things like live yogurt, some of those cheeses, kefir, all those kind of things, buttermilk, lassi, all those things are actually really protective of breast cancer. And that might be because they're linked to having a higher calcium. Higher calcium actually helps to reduce our risk of breast cancer. And then we want to be eating a portion of cruciferous vegetables. What are cruciferous vegetables? Cruciferous vegetables are all the ones that look like they've got a cross. So they are things like our broccolis, our cauliflowers, our cabbages. All of those vegetables are really, really protective, and they help to support our liver in removing things like the estrogen and the other hormones that we've used up in our body and removing it from our body. The other thing we want to have is 2 portions of dark leafy greens. So the spinaches, the kales, the cavalloneras, all of those things. Again, very, very protective, not just because of the iron. We want to have a low glycemic index diet. What does that mean? That means we're having a diet which is releases blood sugar slowly. We know that this makes a difference. I'm not going to go into this in much detail, but I do this when the integrative oncology course that I'm run, which you can do, is just self-paced, and we kind of explain why. And we look into sugar, we look into metabolic health. But we know that if you have a diet that's high in protein and fiber, that really releases blood sugar a little bit more slowly. So we want to make sure our plate is half fruit and vegetables, and we want to make sure we're having some lean protein at every single meal. The one thing about dairy is that there's a small risk. If you drink milk daily, that's cow milk. It can increase your risk of breast cancer reoccurrence very, very slightly, but it's not the dairy milk, not the dairy foods. If you're premenopausal, we want to really include those dairy products, particularly these fermented ones. With postmenopausal, it's a little bit less about the dairy, it's more about having high calcium foods. So that is the dark leafy greens, that is the broccoli, that's the sesame seeds, and all of those kind of things. And then when it comes to nutrition and breast cancer, it's so complex. There's so many conversations and research and contentious points in this. And, if you work with me one-to-one, or if you do go on to do the integrative oncology course, I will go through the science behind sugar, cancer, metabolic health. There's so much confusion there. And I'll explain what we know and what we don't know so far. But we do know that, for example, having type 2 diabetes increases your risk of breast cancer, increases your risk of breast cancer recurrence, and also can impact the outcomes. And we know that brown and black people are more likely to have type 2 diabetes. So this impacts both our treatment for breast cancer, but also our survival and outcomes. Meat and fish, a lot of people kind of go onto this raw food or vegan diets. Actually, that's not necessarily protective. Particularly eating oily fish like salmon is pretty protective. We've talked about dairy products. Intermittent fasting, time restricted eating. I know there's so much going on with these conversations with Zoe and Mindy Peltz and all these other people about fasting and time restricted eating. However, one thing I will tell you right now is fasting overnight for 13 hours can reduce the risk of breast cancer recurrence. There's a really important study. There's one study that collated all the different studies about this. And we know it's actually 12.5 hours, but we want to really round up to those 13 hours to make sure that we're getting that overnight fast. And this ensures that our gut is repairing and can work well. Our gut health is very linked to our immune health. And when we've had chemotherapy and surgery, other treatments, especially antibiotics, it really impacts our gut health. So our beneficial bacteria often die. And what we want to do is create an environment by supporting our gut health where the beneficial bacteria really want to continue to grow and to look, support us so that we can actually have a good immune system. There's a lot of chat about keto diets and low carb diets. Low carb diets, we kind of need to understand a little, and both of them, there's some really positive data, particularly through treatment, but we do need to understand more. I'm currently on a course, which is really all about metabolic health and cancer. So really delving in deep into that data, even though I understand quite a lot about it already. We've talked about type 2 diabetes and our immune health. And then there's the gut-brain axis and our food and mood. And we really have different ways in which our gut and our brain are connected. There's through the beneficial bacteria, there's through like different nerves. And so that's something that we do want to talk about and understand. And I will touch on it a bit later on when we talk about kind of our mental health and stress. And then supplements and interactions and drugs treatment. So yes, I posted about, there's a lot of confusion about turmeric. Now, turmeric, the spice, is safe if you put it in food and in hot milk and things like that. But it's these high dose curcumin, which is the active ingredient in turmeric, which is not safe. So epigenetics, I want to really I know this might be a word that none of you have heard about, but basically we all have different genes and we're born with those genes. However, we can switch our genes on and off using our diet and lifestyle and ensure that some are more switched on and more expressed over others. And that is what epigenetics is. So we can inherit some unfortunate genes, but we can still regulate that so that it is more favorable of us by looking at our diet and lifestyle. And actually genomic testing, which I specialize in, is something which can help us to personalize our diet and lifestyle. So let me give you an example. My whole family, so that's my mother, my father, myself, my brother, my sister-in-law, and one of my nephews. The others are too well, you can do it at any age, but I prefer to do it when they're older. We've all done our genomics. Now, my mother's had breast cancer, I've had breast cancer, my father had prostate cancer. So we have this risk. What's really interesting is that there are two things which are really fascinating. One is we all are horrible sleepers, horrible. And I've done the genomic testing, and what I can understand is that we are very poor at making melatonin our sleep hormone. I will talk about that more later. But because I know that now, I'm doing loads of things with my family to help us all to sleep better, including myself. And because we know that impacts our immune health and so many different aspects of our health. So that's the thing. That's very interesting. So again, just a recap of how do we eat to support our health to reduce breast cancer risk? We talk about the low glycemic index, eating food that releases blood sugar slowly. If we want to kind of lose weight and be careful of our weight, we want to feel full. We want to feel satiated. So by having a diet which has got fiber and protein and good fats, that's more satiating. It makes us feel more full. So that's what we want to do. So then we're less likely to overeat the things which are less beneficial for us. I always say avoid breakfast cereal. It's a really highly processed food. We want to start our day with protein and fiber-based foods, such as porridge, Greek yogurt and berries, egg-based breakfast, all sorts of things. And I've got loads of recipes on my blog, on my website, that you can and download. There's a really lovely high protein breakfast ebook which you can download for free. So I really suggest you do that. And then with lunch and dinner, we want to place half our plates with vegetables, fruits, and salads. Then we want to add the protein. It could be poultry, eggs, fish, tofu, beans, lentils, cheese, meat, any of those things. And then we want to add the carbohydrate in the form of whole grains and starchy vegetables. So really focusing on that kind of whole grain. So that would be like the brown rice and the quinoa and things like that. And then we want to add in loads of spices and herbs. They are packed with nutrients and antioxidants. They don't add really any calories, and they're so tasty. And we want to have these good fats in form of monounsaturated fats, like that's things like extra virgin olive oil, nuts and seeds, avocado, and then fermented foods, because that supports our gut health. Physical activity. I think physical activity is one thing that's really, really interesting. What we know is that if you've never exercised before, adding the right amount of physical activity in can really help to reduce your risk of reoccurrence by up to 64%. If you have exercised before, it still reduces the risk of reoccurrence. It's one of the most important tools we have in our toolbox. And we need to think about different forms of exercise. So we want to think about endurance, aerobic exercise, strength training. Most women don't do enough strength training because we're worried about being bulky or diet culture or any of those things. I really want to be doing 2 sessions a week. You don't have to go to the gym. You can do that at home with like cans of beans and books and things like that. But it's really, really important to exercise these major muscle groups. And then flexibility. Now, the recommendations from both the UK and the US governments is at least 150 minutes of a week of a moderate aerobic activity plus those 2 strength training. That equates to really kind of doing about half an hour each day, or 75 minutes a week of vigorous aerobic activity. That means that you're very you're out of breath and you can't talk, or doing a mix of those. However, South Asians, which make up 25% of the global population, we have very poor metabolic health for various reasons. I'm not going into that today, but we need to do at least 230 minutes. So we need to do at least another 10 to 15 minutes a day to really meet the exercise requirements to support our metabolic health, which will reduce our risk of cardiovascular disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, all of those things. And exercise snacking. If you're busy, you can't do half an hour, 45 minutes. Try and stop a few times a day and do just 5 minutes. So while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, do some squats or some wall push-ups or anything like that. What we do know is that increasing our activity after breast cancer is really important for epigenetics. It can switch on or fully express some of the more positive genes, which means our survival outcomes improve. It's about really using our skeletal muscle. It could be anything: walking, running, dancing, biking. And what we want to do is, again, this moderate 3 to 6 or over 6. And this is really interesting. It's about also not being sedentary. We are quite sedentary now. We're all sitting, particularly if we don't commute to work or we're not, we're driving. We really, and like watching TV and not having enough sleep. And all of this can impact your other hormones. It can impact your hunger and your desire to eat. And that means that we can eat more and increase our body weight. So it's a real mix of all of these different things. Sleep. I did allude to sleep. I am not the best sleeper. I'm going to own that. You can see slight bags under my eyes. But what we know is sleep is one of the most important things. And I think since we had smartphones, which we didn't have before 2012, really, all of us have lost about an hour of sleep, which is, globally. So our sleep is really important for our immune system. When we're sleeping, our immune system produces this amazing, like brilliant, like protective things called antibodies and cytokines, which work to against infection disease, and they really help our immune system work well. If we don't sleep well, this reduces our immune system function. It means we don't make up enough of these things called these natural killer cells, which are really important in viral infections and catching viruses, but also in cancer. And again, we increase these inflammatory cytokines, which can increase issues with our cardiovascular and metabolic disorders, which means we can put on weight. We have more weight around our stomach. We want to eat more, and that can impact our risk of breast cancer recurrence. So just a few tips to help you sleep. I was not good at the blue light last night. I was working till really late. But we want to switch off all electronic devices, including our phone, TV, laptop, at least 60 minutes or ideally 90 minutes before sleeping. So read a book. I know the Kindle Paperwhite is actually quite good, but those things can really help. We want to make sure our bedrooms are cooler so that you actually get some good quality sleep. So keeping the window open, having a fan. I know so many of us are experiencing menopausal side effects through treatment and beyond. So we want to make sure our bedrooms are 18 to 19 centigrade. I have my window open during the day to really get it cool and kind of fresh, and then I sleep with a fan most of the year round, actually, just to keep the bedroom cool, even if I have to have a bigger duvet, to just make sure that the bedroom is cooler so I can get to sleep and stay asleep. Having a bath or shower can be really relaxing. Also, one of those things that's really important is having the same routine. If you have a routine, your body knows it's time to go to sleep. So I try and do everything in the same order. So I have a shower, I do my kind of facial, whatever I'm doing, my cleansing and stuff. I have my supplements, I do my gratitude diary, and then I read and go to sleep. So I do that in the same order and the same time frame every day. Trying to go to bed at the same time is also really important. Don't watch TV and work in laptop and bed. Basically, in your bedroom, you should be getting ready. You should be relaxing, sleeping, having sex, and that's pretty much it. Not any of those other things. And I know it's really hard when we are working and things like that, especially from home. Gratitude. I write down 5 things each day that I'm really grateful for. And sometimes it's hard. Last night was really hard because I had a really difficult day. But just remembering to do that reminds me that I have got a good life, and it puts me into a more positive frame of mind when I go to sleep. And there's evidence to show when we have that gratitude, we're more likely to sleep better. Meditation helps to calm the mind and help us sleep. There are loads of free apps and or Insight Timer, yours, or any of these things. And there are lots of great sleep meditations there. Magnesium. A lot of us need more magnesium in times of stress and insomnia. So magnesium supplements are really helpful. Topical magnesium, such as having an Epsom salt bath or a magnesium cream, is actually really useful because our body absorbs it really well. You can take oral supplements too. I do find the creams are much better. And then having this bedtime routine. I try and dim all the lights in the evening. So from about 8 o'clock, try and switch off the overhead lights and kind of have more lamps and things on. And that really helps. And again, like doing things in the same order. So our mental health is often impacted when we've had cancer. Sorry, I'm going to need a sip of water. So many of us have such a difficult time with a diagnosis, and that's myself included. And we can experience depression, anxiety, addiction, fatigue, insomnia, memory loss, mood swings, and post-traumatic stress disorder. I actually recorded a video about post-traumatic stress disorder last week because it's something that really impacts so many of us in October when it comes to breast cancer awareness. And there's so much about breast cancer, and there's a lot of pink washing, and there's a lot of stress and all of those sorts of things. And I think there's a lot of work for us to do individually, but I think there's work for kind of the community to do too. But there's loads of things that can help. Psychological treatment, whether it's one-to-one or group therapy, breast cancer support groups, meditation, breath work. Honestly, Insight Timer has got so much free meditation breathwork. I really recommend it. Cognitive behavioral therapy. Some of these things are great because they actually help with the menopausal side effects too, and I'll touch on those. We know that looking after our diet, sleep, and lifestyle can help support our mental health. Sometimes we might need antidepressants. And I don't think we should really knock ourselves if we do need them, particularly straight after a diagnosis or through treatment, because it's very difficult, or when we've just finished treatment. Complementary therapy and stress management. We'll talk about stress in a minute. But there are local breast cancer support groups and cancer support groups which can support like things like Maggie's, Future Dreams, Southeast Cancer Support Centre, Macmillan Centres. There's lots of support. So chronic stress and cancer, and I really, with my PhD, I'm really interested in looking at stress and our interaction with our diet and lifestyle and estrogen positive breast cancer. 80% of cancers are estrogen positive. Um, Obviously there are lots of people with triple negative too, and with not estrogen positive, but we know that when we are chronically stressed, not acute stress. So if you just have 1 week at work where there's a big deadline and you get it done, that's fine. Or you have a car accident and you have a horrible day, that's fine. But it's when we have this chronic stress. At the moment, I'm going through a period of chronic stress. I have something really difficult I'm dealing with. And I know that's impacting my sleep, it's impacting my health, it's actually impacting how I eat too, because I'm stress eating. But what we do know is that it also impacts lots of different hormones to be released in our body, including adrenaline and cortisol. We do need both of those. They're not bad hormones. We need them to for our get up and go for motivation. But if we're chronically high, that can increase inflammation in our body, and that can increase our risk of cancer growth and spread. So you don't necessarily need to understand this, but we know that this is chronically stress, and all of these different norepinephrine and epinephrine are the American words for adrenaline. Can increase, and dopamine, which is our reward center, that can decrease. We're getting a lot of dopamine. We're not getting enough of the kind of good, long lasting dopamine. We're getting a lot of short dopamine from things like phone and playing bingo or whatever it is online. What we want is that connection with people, and like cold showers and saunas and all of those things which increase our dopamine for longer, which is much better for us. But basically, when we have this chronic stress and these hormones increase, it can increase genomic instability, which means our DNA is not repairing very well. It can increase cell growth. It can increase the blood vessels growing for the cancer cells to kind of create space to grow into big areas. It can affect our immune system and this immune evasion. So the CCTV camera doesn't work quite so well. It can increase metabolic disorders, meaning our mitochondria not working well, which are the energy powerhouses in our cells. That can also change kind of like our metabolic health, and then it can increase metastasis. So that doesn't mean this is not to kind of beat yourself up, but really to understand that we do need to be conscious about managing stress. We know that stress impacts our health in so many ways, including our immune system. It can increase inflammation, affect our sleep and our hunger, and our risk of cancer. And if you look here, there's different aspects, life events, socioeconomic burdens, like, financial issues. We have low social support. I think in COVID, a lot of us had this where we just didn't have, particularly if you lived alone like I did, you didn't have the same social support and see your friends and family as much. Trauma. And then obviously the psychological chronic stress, optimism, depression, and that can affect our HPA axis. That's our hypothalamus, our pituitary, and our adrenal glands, and that can release lots of different hormones, which impacts our autonomic nervous system. We have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. The sympathetic is kind of the flight, fight, freeze or fawn, and the parasympathetic is the rest and digest. And we really want to be activating that rest and digest all the time. So there's so much we need to do. Our vagus nerve is very important. So activating our vagus nerve is important. So we have to try and work on clear boundaries. So many of us are affected with breast cancer at a point in our lives which are already busy as women. We're in that sandwich generation, looking after children, looking after elderly parents that become more elderly. We're really busy with work. We don't necessarily have enough time on our hands. We're going through menopause maybe. And so we have to really learn to establish those clear boundaries and limit commitments to look after ourselves so we've got enough time for self-care. I think meditation, prayer, guided imagery, it can all help create a calming environment, music and lights. I try and have the lights low. I have candles burning, that sort of thing. Stress reducing botanicals and nutrients. Those are things that we can talk a little bit more about if I work one-on-one, if you do the integrative oncology course, and having this really strong support network. And I'm going to talk more about social health shortly. So social health, we are social animals. We are animals. And we know from loads of research, Blue Zones and Dr. Vivek Murthy's research, that those that have strong social networks and strong social support have improved immune health. If you have improved immune health, you can find your immune system works better to catch those cancer cells before they develop. We also know that loneliness is associated with chronic stress and inflammation, which can weaken our immune system. So many of us are lonely. I know I was, particularly in the COVID pandemic, and things haven't gone back to the same. People aren't investing in the relationships and in the same way. And so it can be really difficult if you don't have a family and partner. Even if you do have those things, that loneliness. I am trying to do lots of activities where I'm not alone. I play tennis and I go to the gym and I like physical activity, but there's lots of other things I do like sound baths and meditations and all sorts of conscious events. And obviously I eat out a lot because I love food. So really thinking about our social health and investing in that can really impact our immune health. And then really environment and toxins. We are so in the 21st century, we have so many synthetic chemicals that have only been created since the Industrial Revolution, which is over the last couple of 100 years. And all of this can impact our body in so many ways. I don't know where everyone lives here, but in the UK, certainly our water is very polluted. So our big bodies of water, such as the sea and lakes, which is really sad. So we can't, we know that that's there. We know that there's environmental pollution. I live in the middle of central London near a very busy road, and I know there's environmental pollution. So for me, having my fan actually has a HEPA air filter, which I sleep with. So that's definitely making a difference. And all of these chemicals can stop our body from detoxification. So I know there's a really bad press with, oh, your liver works, you don't need to help with detoxifying, but we do need a little bit of support, and that we can do with diet and nutrition and lifestyle. What we do know is that we talked about water, we've talked about air, but there's also our soil is quite contaminated with pesticides and other things. And there are all these chemicals in our products, the products we put on our face, the products, if we think the average woman before she's even left the home is in contact with over 300 chemicals that are synthetic. That's quite interesting. And we know this can impact some of these things like these volatile organic compounds, things that are hard for our body to process. And this is kind of the main health effects of pollution. So organic food, that's such a big conversation. And we actually have a British list too. So I haven't actually updated. I need to update. I forget that I think it's normally out of this time of year. It's not actually out for this year yet. But we do know that sometimes eating organic food can reduce the amount of pesticides that we ingest. Some people are more susceptible to pests than others. So for example, I know my mum is, but I'm not as susceptible. So it's something I think that organic foods are definitely a lot more expensive. I also think there are a lot of foods which are not available, particularly culturally, cultural foods and vegetables. So there's no direct association pesticides cause cancer, but we do know there's some that say increase the risk. What we want to be careful of, the ones which are on the kind of what they call a dirty dozen. Some foods and fruits and vegetables absorb more pesticides than others. Things that you can peel, generally don't worry about them. You don't need to eat those organically because you're peeling them. With those with skins like avocados, bananas, satsumas, all of those things. But some of these other things where we do eat the skin, we want to be more careful, and that kind of changes. But things like berries, what I do is if I can't buy organic, I wash them with a mixture of kind of bicarbonate of soda and water and vinegar. And actually that helps them to stop going bad as well, but it also helps to try and get rid of some of the surface residue. I think eating a mixture of like for example, I buy a lot of fruit and vegetables from amazing greengrocers near me, and they go to the farms directly, and they're not certified organic, but I know the farms are trying to limit all the pesticides and use. So look out for things like that. When it comes to meat, dairy, fish, other animal products, again, like trying to eat organic, but it's not always possible. Like I eat a lot of wild game meat, that's not organic, but it is organic because it's not farmed. So that kind of is something to think about. And I know not everyone can afford it, so we just have to not worry about it too much as well. Estrogen and cancer, as I said, 80% of breast cancers are estrogen positive, or hormone positive rather. But even the people who don't have breast cancer, people who've got estrogen negative or progesterone negative, men, we are all coming into contact with estrogens and something called xenoestrogen. We can mimic the effect of estrogen on our body. And a lot of these things come from plastics and petrochemicals and these synthetic chemicals, phthalates, flame retardants, phenols, pesticides, BCPA, aromatic hydrocarbons. So what we want to do is kind of avoid some of those products and really careful at label reading. We want to drink water not from plastic bottle. We want to drink from a glass or metal bottle. We want to kind of try and use glass containers in the home rather than plastic containers. We want to limit our use of single-use plastic, things like that, which is actually better for the environment too, and it saves a bit of money too. So all of this will help with if you've got, estrogen dependent cancers. So that can include breast cancer, but also prostate cancer. And I'm actually writing a course and doing loads of work on prostate cancer too. Menopause. Sorry. So many of us, particularly those of us who've had breast cancer at a younger age, have either chemotherapy or hormone treatment, which puts us into kind of a chemical or sudden menopause. And one of the things that, particularly when you've had a hormone dependent cancer, is that we can't take HRT, and some of us have really bad side effects. So it might be hot flushes, it might be like really bad headaches, it might be joint aches, all of those sorts of things. I know it's really tough. So some of the things that we talk about, which are quite important to people, are hot flashes, fatigue, musculoskeletal symptoms, sexual dysfunction, and weight gain. So those are things which are really common. And then there's also the vulva, vaginal, and sexual dysfunction issues. Now, this particular image, I realized I spelled oncology wrong. It's from 2021, and it's looking at a study of all the things that you can do which are non-HRT to help support you with these menopausal side effects. And there's so many different things. So if we just take hot flashes, cognitive behavioral therapy can help, hypnosis, yoga, and mindfulness. And these are all things that we can do, or we can go to classes to help us. Acupuncture. When I was having treatment and having really bad issues with tamoxifen, I was lucky enough to have acupuncture at the hospital. There are also drugs that can help, which are gabapentin and pregabalin, and then these ganglion blocks, and having all these other drugs. So all of these things can help with hot flushes, and then a cold pad pillow. When it comes to fatigue, again, all of these things like cognitive behavioral therapy, self-administered acupressure. I had these amazing acupuncture little kind of almost a butters, which are the tiny, tiny needle, and you put it in and the acupuncture specialist, who's actually oncologist, showed me where to put them, and they really helped with some of the side effects and symptoms. Martial arts can help, physical activity, ginseng. And then with the musculoskeletal things, obviously there's more chemical things like having switching to an aromatase inhibitor. So rather than tamoxifen, using letrozole and anastrozole, and blocking your ovaries from producing estrogen. And then drugs like duloxetine, but then also things like TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine, or physical exercise, neuromuscular tapping. So there's loads of things that we can do. And then the vaginal. A lot of us have issues, whether it's sex or not sex, or just the vagina and the vulva. So there's vaginal hormones, and this is something from ASCO, which came out as being entirely safe. You are entitled, if you've got any vaginal atrophy, to have either a vaginal estrogen pessary or a vaginal estrogen cream or ring. And that will help to reduce the atrophy in your vagina and vulva. And it's something for you that you can get prescribed. It's completely safe. And anyone that argues, we can let me know, and I'll send you all papers that show that it's completely safe. You can have vaginal moisturizer and lubricants. Yes, the brand Yes or Sutil are very, very good. There's another called Hylo Femme. And again, your oncologist or your GP can prescribe these. Vaginal lidocaine for these are really bad. And then obviously things like cognitive behavioral therapy, and then giving yourself a bit of time. So all of these things can help. And I don't want you to feel and suffer alone, because it's so uncomfortable. I know personally, and there are lots of things we can do without taking HRT. So again, I just want to quickly touch on the genetic testing. We know that our genetic makeup is so individual and so different, and we inherit things from our families, and then some things are just there. But by doing genomic testing, and I use Life Code GX, we can understand how our body responds and what gene mutations we have and what we need to do. Common things are things like vitamin D receptor, transport vitamin D function, all of those things that if you're not able to move or utilize vitamin D, then we need to supplement. There's all sorts of different things like hormones, and I think that that's something extra that we could potentially do, and I am going to do a little bit of a special offer, which I will send for anyone who signs up for the Integrative Oncology course. So just want to touch on that. And then just a little bit about me. I work with individual patients on a one-to-one basis, looking at using optimizing health with integrative and functional medicine, nutritional medicine, the nutrigenic testing. I will send you all a 30-minute discovery call if you want to talk to me for free, and we can just have a chat about breast cancer or any other things. And I do a lot of academic research. So I will be, if you're happy to, I will want to be keeping some of you on my database so I can invite you to different breast cancer research trials that I'm doing. At the moment, I'm working on well, there's a few that I already have all recruited all the people, but one of them was prehab, which is about prehabilitation before breast cancer treatment, but really looking at certain groups, marginalized groups. The next two, which I'm working on, is one is like looking at weight management in breast cancer patients, and the other one is on physical activity in more advanced breast cancer patients. So I will be recruiting for those patients, but we're particularly focusing on Black, South Asian, and low socioeconomic groups for that from one of those studies. But hopefully that's been quite useful. I'm going to stop sharing. We've got about 2 minutes. If anyone's got any questions, you can take yourself off mute. You can just put them in the chat. You can just ask me, and we can answer those for you now before we finish up today. Anyone got any questions or thoughts or anything they want to ask me?
Hi, Tara.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you. You?
You?
Good. I just wanted to ask with regards to the milk, is there any difference between Channel Island milk and, ordinary cow's milk that you get over here?
Yeah, so Channel Island milk is higher in fat, and it's often more higher in the A1 protein. So sometimes it's a lot more digestible. So it's really helpful for people who are more likely to be lactose intolerant. To be fair, 70% of the global population are lactose intolerant. So that's but I mean, I think we want to again like look for that organic if possible. But there's not, I mean, I think it's tastier and creamier. I think there's more A1 protein, so it's more digestible. So it's those things rather than the cancer aspect. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I suppose it's like you say, just to limit it as well, isn't it? Because
Yeah, the actual milk itself. And I've got a question here from Helen. Eggs are safe. I don't know where this understanding it. Eggs, all kind of proteins are safe. We want to obviously limit our red meat and our processed meat, things like sausages, bacon, all those sorts of things, just for risk of cancer, definitely, because they the carcinogens and the nitrates can impact our DNA and create more DNA damage. But eggs are really safe. And in fact, they're great foods, which is if you go back to my first slide when I send you the recording, which won't be till well, I can figure out how to do it. But eggs are full of protein, they're full of good fats, they're really positive. And if you want to be careful of some of the fats, use a mixture of egg whites and eggs. So I make protein pancakes. If you go on my recipes on my website, there's loads of protein pancakes. And if you go to the ebooks, there's a high protein breakfast. There's some other protein pancakes, which is such a great thing. You whip up a batch, keep the batter in the fridge, and that's got loads and loads of protein. It's got eggs in them. But I mean, I know some people don't like eggs or don't want to eat eggs, but they're a great source. But we do need to make sure we're having that 30 grams of protein at each meal if possible. And one egg only has 67 grams of protein. So what I will say is please everyone think about protein. It's really important. Our protein requires increase as we get older, and we really need that protein to reduce muscle wastage, sarcopenia. And so many of us don't have enough muscle mass, and that impacts our metabolic health, but also can impact our cancer. There's loads of research show the more muscle you have and the better grip strength you have, you're more likely to survive cancer, any type of cancer, and any kind of recurrence. Thank you so much for joining us live. It's a shame that more people won't be able to join us live, and thanks for the great questions, Helen and Karen. But this will be recorded. I'll be sending a follow-up email in the next few days. It may be at the beginning of next week. But take care, and hopefully that was interesting. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.